Welcome back to software engineering class. For this, we will be talking about the different concepts that exist between the testing of web app and mobile app. But first, let's have a look at one of the definition for both of them. The first one, the mobile application is application that is developed essentially for one particular mobile device or several mobile device, but it is installed directly onto the device itself. While the web application, they are basically internet-enabled apps and they are accessible via the mobile device web browser. So if we have a look at the two applications on our right, which one do you think is a mobile app and which one is the web app? Okay, so if you have answered that mobile app is the one on the left, then you are right. If we look into the characteristic, for example, the first one, accessibility, a mobile app is totally compatible with the device hardware and the native features inside. For example, accelerometer, camera, and so on. And nowadays, there are more and more sensors which is installed inside the mobile. Meanwhile, the web apps, they can also have an access, but with a very limited amount of the device native feature. But in terms of upgradability, a web app is much more dynamic. We can easily update it, okay, as compared to mobile app, because a mobile app, every time the users need to upgrade and so on, okay. Then, in terms of efficiency, the mobile apps, they are more expensive to develop actually. However, they are faster and they are more efficient. As why? They are working in tandem with the mobile device that they are developed for. So it's very tailor-made. Also, they are assured of their quality and the security because the App Store control this. Okay, so not all application can pass through the App Store's requirement. And then in terms of reach, obviously the web app is more accessible across many platforms. It can be easily shared among everyone and so on. So it has a far greater reach capability than the native app or the mobile app. And finally, for the user interface, for most of the mobile device users, both the mobile app and the web app, they look and work somehow similarly with very little difference between them. So the choice between these two type of apps of user interface, when we have decided whether to develop a user-centric app or an application-centric app. So due to the characteristics that we want to acquire and so on, it gives birth to different applications such as mobile hybrid, progressive web, and there are some other derivative concepts that have been developed. But the basic features are what we have just discussed just now. So first, let us have a look into the web app testing. If we dissect the testing process for web app, there are several parts. The first one is for the content itself. So this is review to uncover errors very specific to the content. Okay, so it's not technical, but it's on the content of the model itself. And then we have the interfacing model, review and testing to make and here we make sure that all the user cases, okay, that we have developed before in the integration and so on can work very well here. And then the design model app for the web app is reviewed to uncover the navigation errors. Okay, number 4, the user interface, and here we test it to make sure that the presentation and all the navigation mechanics works very well. The selected functional components are also unit tested, okay, to make sure that functionally all of the small unit can work very well. So in terms of web testing, we know that in web browser there's a interconnectivity between browsers, and then we have the hardware platform, communication protocol, as well as the backroom application. And normally in web testing, what we apply is actually the object-oriented techniques. Okay, so this one has not, I haven't explained this yet, but know that the object-oriented techniques, they differs from the conventional technique that we have seen so far. When we do the content testing, we are looking into simple mistakes such as typography, but also the incorrect information. And then on a further legal level is the improper organization or violation of the intellectual property. Okay, so these things, and furthermore, they can normally characterized by synthetic errors, semantic errors, as well as the organization of the structure. So when we review a content, okay, we need to answer this question. For example, are the information given factually accurate? Okay, is the information concise and to the point? Okay, we want the information to be straight to the point. And then is the layout of the content object is easy for the user to understand. Okay, so this is pretty much similar to mobile app, but we need to make sure it works on web app as well. Okay, others can be for in terms of information, is the content is offensive, misleading, or does it open the door to litigation, for example. And then does the content contain internal links that supplement existing content? Are the links correct? And then finally the aesthetic style and so on. Okay, we can also perform what we call the database testing. So we know that from the database to the user interface, we have different layers of data management. For example, starting from database, we have the data access, management, transformation, the server layer, and then the user interface. So test needs to be defined for each layer to make sure the interfacing is done correctly and properly. Interface testing is performed to look at the interaction mechanism as well as validating the user interface. The overall strategy for this testing is number one, to uncover errors related to specific interface mechanism. For example, if we have errors in the execution of a menu link, or when we have a form, how we enter the data. And then secondly, is to uncover errors in the way the interface implements the semantics of the navigation, the web app functionality, or the display of content. Okay, the interface strategy, the tactical steps of the strategy can be divided into 5 steps. The first one, to look at the interface features, okay, to ensure that the design related visual are available for the user without error. Second one, individual interface mechanism are tested, as I said, analogous to unit testing. So for example, tests are designed to exercise all form, client-side scripting, dynamic HTML, streaming content, etc. Each interface mechanism is tested within the context of a use case or the network semantic unit, NSU. There are the paths that connect the different navigation nodes. And normally, these have been explained earlier in the design of web app. Okay, for any specific user category. The complete interface is tested against selected use cases and the NSU to uncover error in the semantics of the interface. Okay, so at this stage, a series of usability tests are conducted. And finally, the interface is tested within a variety of environment or different type of browser to ensure that it will be compatible. Apart from the interface testing, we also have navigation testing. So how to understand the need for navigation testing? We can relate ourselves as a visitor who walks through a store or a museum. When we get into this, there are many pathways to take, stops to make, things that we want to learn and look at, the activities that we want to initiate, and decisions. So this navigation process, it can be predictable. Okay, in the sense that every visitor, normally when we come at a place, we have a set of adjectives that we want to accomplish when we arrive. But at the same time, this can also be unpredictable because a visitor, once we arrive, we can be influenced by anything that we see or we learn. So we might choose a different path, or we might initiate a different action that is not typical to the original objective that we have set. Okay. So the job of navigation testing is one, to ensure that the mechanism that allows the web app user to travel through the web apps are all functional. And second, to validate that each NSU can be achieved by the appropriate user category. So the first phase of the testing actually begins during interface testing. And then the navigation mechanism like the links and anchor, how we direct things, bookmark, sitemap, and so on, are tested to ensure that each performs its intended function. So some of the tests noted can be performed by automated tools, okay, as usual, while others are designed and normally executed manually. Okay, so the intent throughout this process is to ensure that errors in navigation mechanics are found before the web app goes online. And to help us with the process, we can try to look at this list of questions and try to answer them one by one. So you can look at this, you can pause this video and have a look at this question. Hopefully it helps when we arrive at this navigation testing process. With that specificity, now we are looking into the specificity for mobile app testing. In this environment, the urgency is the fact that we have a very short market window. So every day people are releasing new app for the same function, okay, or the same objective that users are looking for. So due to this very short, what happened is there's a tendency that security testing are not done properly for the mobile app, okay, because we have that constraint. People tend to just release the product without doing these two things properly. And there's also the usability testing that sometimes are deferred until the last minute. So this is not a healthy development procedure. Okay, so we need to make sure that all the testing be integrated from the design and the requirement process of the product. What is the specificity of mobile app compared to web app? Is the fact that users, they expect the mobile app to be very context aware and they want to have a maximum personalized user experience. So this introduces difficulty from testing because we have a dynamic ad hoc networks. The fact that mobile app needs to be tailored to the devices, but we have different devices available on the market now. And then we also have the mobile network configuration, which are very different one from another, and then we need to delve with limited resources. In terms of the testing strategy, what we need to do is to adopt the basic strategy that we have seen so far, but we need to adopt the specific ones as well, as we have, as we can see here. The first one is in terms of user experience testing. Okay, so users, they are involved early in the development process to ensure that the mobile app lives up to the usability and the expectation of the stakeholders for all the supported devices. Then for the device compatibility testing, the testers needs to verify that the mobile app, it works correctly on all the required hardware and the software combination. Next, the performance testing. The testers needs to check the non-functional requirements that are unique to mobile devices. For example, the download time, the speed of the processor, storage capacity, as well as power availability. And most importantly, the connectivity testing. Testers ensure that the mobile app can access any needed networks or the web services, and it can also tolerate weak and interrupted network access. Okay. Next, the security testing. What we need to ensure is that the mobile app, it does not compromise the privacy or the security requirements of its user. And that's the notion of testing in the wild. So the app need to be tested under different realistic conditions on the actual user devices with a variety of networking environments around the globe. Okay, so all the apps needs to be international. Okay, for that matter, we need to make sure that we do this testing in the wild. Okay, a little bit everywhere around the world. If we cannot do it by ourselves, we can outsource it to others across the globe. And finally, the certification testing, ensure that the mobile app, it meets the standard established by the app stores that will distribute it. For user experience testing, we need to take into consideration that mobile app are developed in a crowded marketplace in which products that provide the same functionality everywhere, and the users need to choose. So how they choose, they normally choose based on the user experience that they can have, and normally what they look for are the ones that are the easiest to use. Okay, so the first thing that we need to take into consideration is the fact that there are more to building a good mobile app user interface than simply shrinking the size of the user interface from an example, the existing desktop application. Okay, so there's more than that. In terms of gesture testing, we know that touch screens are ubiquitous on mobile devices, and as a consequence, the developers have to add multi-touch gestures. Okay, unfortunately, these gesture-intensive interfaces, they prevent a number of review and testing challenges, but it is nevertheless needs to be included in part of the plans. Okay. Next one, the virtual keyboard input. Okay, the thing is, we want to introduce virtual keyboard, but when it appears, it may obscure a part of the display screen. Okay, so when we activate it, it might hide some of the information that we want. So we need to ensure that important screen information, they are not hidden, okay, when the users are typing anything. You also need to look at the auto correction function. Okay, hopefully it is easy to use, it is very language specific, very sensitive, and it can manage mistyped words without crashing. Voice input and recognition. So we know that voice input has become an increasingly common method to provide input and commands for hands busy, eyes busy situation. Okay, so the voice input may take several forms with different levels of programming complexity that is required for each process. Okay, and this also needs to be considered when we develop our mobile. Next are the different associated sensors which are developed and integrated in our handphone. So every developers want to be the first one to be associated with the sensors, okay, and develop an app corresponds to it. So for that matter, we need to do multiple type of testing, okay, because when things are new, they are prone to errors. Okay, so instead of wanting to make the product available as soon as possible, what we need to make sure is the fact that the sensors introduce none of errors. Okay, and finally, the alerts and extraordinary condition. Okay, so when a mobile app, it runs in real-time environment, there are factors that may impact its behavior. For example, a Wi-Fi signal may be lost, an incoming text, message, notification, and so on may be received while the user is working with the mobile app. So these factors can disrupt the mobile app user workflow. Okay, and we need to make sure that this does not disturb the whole procedure and the usage of the application. Other consideration are the internalization versus localization. So internalization is the process of creating the software product so it can be used in several countries with various languages without requiring any engineering changes. And the localization obviously is the process of adapting a software application for use in a targeted global region, okay, by adding local specific requirements and translating text element to appropriate languages. Okay, so this effort costly because when we want to do testing, we need to do it in the wild, as we have said. So we need to do it in each country to which the localization and internalization are made. But to reduce this cost, what we can do is what we call the outsourcing testing. So we outsource the testing to local vendors in each country, okay, to make sure that it is more cost effective. However, we know that outsourcing risks a degradation of communication between the developer and those who are performing the test. So this must be taken into consideration. Next, the real-time testing. Okay, so we need to do it in real time to consider the different situation that we might have. And finally, what we call the AI system testing. So nowadays, most of the mobile apps, they are supported by artificial intelligence techniques. So we need to do this system testing as well. And I think that's it for the mobile app. Okay, so in my slides, I also give a little more explanation on the testing of web application because it involves many concepts. Okay, that was difficult to address in a general sense. So I'm putting it in appendix so you can have a look at it. Otherwise, that's it. And I hope the course have helped you a lot in looking at the different angles of doing testing. In user interface testing, the interface features are tested to ensure that the design rule, aesthetics, and related visual content is available without error. Then the individual interface mechanism, they are tested in a manner that is analogous or quite similar to the unit testing. Okay. Each interface mechanism, they are tested within the context of the use cases and the navigation semantic unique for a specific user category.